Hi everyone, my name is Shrikant Kadu. I'll be talking about cross-functional aspects of product management today. I'll be sharing 10 rules that have worked for me in the past throughout this presentation. Something about my background. I'm currently a senior product manager at eBay. Previously, I was the growth product manager at StubHub, which is a marketplace for sports, music, and theater-related events. Prior to that, I worked at Empathize, which is a SaaS company that provides semantic search and chatbot products to commerce businesses. And prior to that, I founded my own venture at Breakthrough Lab, which is an incubator of Brown University. In my free time, I like to read, write, interact with people from different walks of life, and I occasionally get my face punched in boxing lessons, which is fun, just like product management. So what exactly is product management? Product management differs from organization to organization, differs from startup versus large organizations. But at its very core, product management is about finding an unmet need, a problem that affects a large scale of users. It could be as simple as designing a cell phone cover because millions of people use cell phones and cell phones are fragile. Or it could be as complicated as designing a Falcon 9 to go to Mars because life on Earth is limited. So it's all about finding a problem that affects user at large scale, then defining a product or feature that caters to that unmet need or the problem. And then it is about coordinating activities across the organization to ensure success of the product. In large organizations, there are different teams. Teams could be in different locations across organization, across offices. So working well cross-functionally is very important in terms of product management in large-scale organizations. Success for a product manager in simple terms is success for the product. There are different verticals in which you can measure success for the product. I have listed 4 verticals here: user adoption, virality, user engagement, and business impact. You can quantify success in each of these 4 verticals. You can measure user adoption in terms of number of new users that you're acquiring. You can measure virality in terms of net promoter score. So virality is as simple as whether users are talking about your product, whether they are talking about your product with their friends, where they are propagating your product knowledge through word of mouth. Then another vertical is user engagement. How much time does user spend interacting with your product? Then you must have defined specific call to actions when you created the product. Are user taking actions that fulfills those call to actions? So that way you can measure user engagement. And then business impact. Is your product generating revenue for the business, or is it just creating new users? So the bottom line is that success for a product manager is success for the product, and you can measure success for the product in any of these 4 verticals, and your product has to do well in at least one of these 4 verticals. Coming to the interaction sphere, you'll be talking to people from different walks of life in your job as a product manager. You'll be working with user researchers to hone on the problem statement. You'll be figuring out right questions to be asked to potential customers with user researchers. Then you'll be interacting with decision makers to gain approval on the necessary resources that you will need to make the product. You'll be interacting with engineers, designers to make product happen. You'll be interacting with data scientists to create algorithms. You'll be interacting with legal and compliance to get necessary approvals on your product. You'll be interacting with marketing, sales, and customer success to figure out go-to-market and operations once your product is live in the market. Then you'll be interacting with product analytics to gain metrics to understand whether your product is doing well or not. You'll be talking to fellow product managers to get their inputs on your product. Then you'll be interacting with program managers that will align resources for you. So the point being, in large-scale organization, you'll be interacting with a gamut of stakeholders throughout the product lifecycle, and it's very important for you to work well cross-functionally to succeed. Coming to the 10 rules of product management, or 10 rules to work well cross-functionally that I was referring to earlier in the presentation. First rule that has worked for me in the past is to proactively anticipate dependencies across different teams. If there's one thing that you can take from this presentation as a product manager, then it is to be proactive. One exercise that has worked for me in the past is to define ideal end-to-end journey of your users, and then at each stage, defining what teams you're dependent on and taking action beforehand. So let's say you have a marketplace product. On marketplace product, there are two different set of users, buyers and sellers. For buyers, buyer will be signing up on the product. Then after they have signed up, they'll be making searches on the search screen. Then they'll be probably adding merchandise to their cart, and then they'll be checking out. On each of these stage, what teams you're dependent on. So for example, on the sign up page, you are dependent on the identity team. You are dependent on the risk team. So tracking all dependencies, keeping in mind the ideal end user journey helps a lot. Then once you have defined the dependencies, finding the right point of contact in dependent teams. And then defining what you will do in both ideal scenario and in worst case scenario. Imagining the ways in which things could go wrong beforehand, and then taking precautionary measures well in advance helps a lot. So that's rule number 1, proactively anticipate dependencies across different teams. Rule number 2, see the world through listeners' eyes. When you interact with different stakeholders, different team members who come from different walks of life, they have different perspectives, they have different deliverables, they have different goals. So understanding where they are coming from, what are their priorities, and what are their deliverables helps a lot. So for example, if you're talking to someone from engineering team, if you're talking to an engineering manager, he's more concerned about security, scalability. If you're talking to someone from legal, they're more concerned about following the laws and regulations. So understanding where they're coming from and understanding their perspective, reiterating their perspective, and finding an action item to take care of their concerns helps a lot. So that's the rule number 2 that has worked for me in the past to work very cross-functionally. Rule number 3 is speak the listener's language. Since you're interacting with people from different teams, different walks of life, they have different terminologies, different lingo. Is to have an intelligent conversation with them, it's very important for you to speak their language. So there are different ways to accumulate that skill or accumulate the ability to work well with people from different walks of life. One thing that has helped me in the past is reading, consuming content that don't necessarily come from my profession. Or making friends who have different jobs. For example, that one conversation that you might be having with your paralegal friend will help you have a good conversation at work with the legal stakeholder for that matter. So that's the rule number 3 that has helped me in the past, which is to speak the listener's language. Rule number 4, clearly communicate priorities and list deliverables. Since you're interacting with stakeholders from different teams and different sections of the organization who might have competing priorities or different priorities, it's always important for you to be a flag bearer of your product and communicate priorities of your product. So in every meeting that you are in, reiterate priorities for your product, and every meeting with clear deliverables. If the meeting is not ending with clear deliverables, with clearly defined timelines, then the meeting didn't go well. And constantly track progress once you have defined deliverables. So that's rule number 4, clearly communicate priorities and list deliverables. Rule number 5, represent people that are not in the meeting room. As a product manager, you will be in a lot of meetings on a lot of days. And not all the stakeholders, not all the people from cross-functional teams will be able to make it to all of those meetings. So it's important for you to gauge availability of all the participants well in advance. And for if any of the key participants will not be able to make it to the meeting, it's your job to sync with them beforehand to capture their inputs and then represent those inputs in actual meeting. That way you are having a holistic discussion and you're taking into consideration all perspective and representing all sides of concerns or all sides of stakeholders. So that's rule number 5 that has helped me, which is to represent people that are not in the meeting room. Rule number 6, document and share priorities with clear timelines. Another part of product manager's job is documentation. In general, document everything, all the aspects of your product, all the meetings with stakeholders. It helps to have a log of all the discussion items to go back in time and see what was the discussion like, were there any open items and stuff along those lines. So it's very important to document everything with clear timelines and priorities. So rule number 5 is proactively communicate when the product is under construction and clear roadblocks. Circling back with my earlier point of being proactive, a product manager has to have an ownership mindset. Uh, there will be times when things won't go as expected. There will be times when issues will arise. The product manager has to be a go-to guy to address all the concerns from all the different stakeholders. And a product manager needs to act as a liaison. There will be situations where he'll need to connect, let's say, someone from legal team who needs an update to the terms and condition, uh, and with someone from marketing team or go-to-market team who is actually publishing those terms and conditions or are involved in customer communication in some form. So it's product manager's job to connect different teams, and it helps a great deal if product manager can act as a liaison and connect people across the organization. So that's rule number 7, proactively communicate when the product is under construction and clear roadblocks. Rule number 8, act as an enforcer for your team and get your hands dirty whenever required. An enforcer in ice hockey is someone who fights for the team. I don't mean to fight literally, but part of product manager's job is to protect his team, is to, for example, if one of the key engineers in your team is a shared resource, he's simultaneously working on multiple initiatives, multiple products. It's your job to understand what is his workload like, and if some bandwidth needs to be made clear for him to work on your product. It's your job to talk to his manager and assess what is his schedule like. Similarly, for cross-functional teams, if let's say marketing is working on a go-to-market strategy for 2 different products, understanding what are the resources like, what are the constraints like, and having intelligent conversation is very important. That way, it also shows that you care for your team members. Then I would recommend every product manager to have at least one specialization that he or she is master in. So it could be that you were an engineer prior to moving to product manager and you have great expertise in front end. It could be that you come from a marketing background and you have expertise in go-to-market strategy. It may be that you come from a legal background and you're great at writing documents from legal standpoint. So having one demonstrable skill definitely helps to gain respect from the team. And I would recommend product managers to have at least one skill that they're master at. Rule number 9, be solution minded, find a way around problems, light up the tunnel yourself if you don't see light at the end of the tunnel. So as a product manager, not everything in your life is going to go well. There will be times when maybe the infrastructure team hasn't approved your build and it is affecting the timeline. There may be time when legal is pushing back on the launch date because they're not satisfied with the terms and condition or the user journey of your product. So in those situations, product manager needs to be someone who's solution minded, who is always thinking in terms of solution, always thinking in terms of the way forward. So being solution minded is very important as a product manager, and then being able to pivot. If your feature is not hitting the metrics, what we can learn from them or where it could take us. Being able to be flexible and pivot, learning from your failures is very important as a product manager as well. And then being a motivated to the team. Naturally, if things don't go as expected, the morale of the team goes low. So being a motivator, being someone who sees positive in every circumstance is very important as a product manager. So that's rule number 9. Rule number 10, take responsibility for failure and share credit for success. In the face of failure, product manager needs to be someone who addresses the elephant in the room. He addresses why we fail, where we lacked, and he performs diagnosis on that failure and comes up with tangible action items that will help the team to move forward with pivoting into new feature or improving the existing feature. So he needs to be someone who takes responsibility and who addresses the issues that people are not likely to address. Then in the face of success, job is easy. Product manager needs to just enjoy. Now, so we are in these times where all of us are working virtually, and um, it's kind of difficult for, especially for product managers, because they are people who are used to having conversations with cross-functional team in your coffee machine, in your hallway, in your events, and those discussions, those casual discussion have great outputs. But a product manager needs to be flexible, which means adjusting to the virtual world, to getting used to getting things done virtually. There's no such thing as over communication. So my one piece of advice for working well virtually would be to just zoom it out. There's a saying, when in doubt, zoom it out. So don't be hesitant to set up as many meetings as you need to ship your product, and also get used to building a rapport virtually. So that would be my advice to work well cross-functionally in a virtual environment. Um, so that's about it. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate your time. One thing that has helped me in the past to improve as a product manager is to help other product managers. And there's truly no other better way to improve as a product manager than to help other product managers. So pass on the baton forward. Thank you for your time. Stay safe and have a good rest of your week.